In this lesson, we'll cover the radial array command. Now, the radial array command is very similar to the linear array, except in this radial array command, we array elements around a point, or in a circle. So to start the radial array command, we can either start the command first or select our object first. Let's select our object first. So let's pick the diffuser in the upper right. That's the square with the X through it. Go ahead and select it by left-clicking it. You'll see it'll turn a different color, dimensions will appear, and your properties box will populate on the left with information for this diffuser. Now let's start the array command. The array command will be in the middle of your ribbon on the modify panel, and it's just called array. Once you select the array command, the options bar will appear, and the first thing we need to do is to select or verify it's selected the radial button on the options bar. The group and associate checkbox means that whatever elements we array and how many are ever arrayed are all grouped together and associated back to the original. Let's leave that checkmarked. Number is the number of elements you want to array. Let's leave it set at 3. Move to. You have two options, second and last. Move to means right now I'm going to define the angle between the first element and the second element, and then every other element after that will have the same angle. If you chose last, you would define the angle between the first element and the last element, and then all the items in between would split the distance or the angles between them. The angle means you define the angle if you want versus defining it on the screen. And then all the way to the right, center of rotation, by default is selected, meaning the default rotational point is on the object you selected. Technically, we don't want it there, so we can either choose place or you can move that to a new point. I'm going to drag the center of rotation from where it's currently at down to the center of the diffuser below it. Now that's going to be the center of my rotation, so all objects being arrayed are going to be arrayed around that center point. The next step is to define the distance between the first element and the second element being arrayed. So as you move your mouse, you'll see the angle line appear. Move your mouse until it's vertical. Left-click your mouse to place it. Then start to drag your mouse clockwise until you see 45 degrees. This will define the distance between the first and second element, and then all subsequent elements have the same spacing. So go ahead and left-click. As you can see, it places 3 elements. Now Revit's asking, you sure do you want 3 or do you want more than 3 or less than 3? Well, let's key in 4 and then hit the Enter key. And as you can see, it creates 4 elements now in the radial array. All are spaced 45 degrees apart because we set the distance from the first element to the second element at 45 degrees. Therefore, all subsequent ones had the same spacing. To deselect, just click in the background anywhere in the white area. Now, since we checkmarked the group and associate box, if you select any one of the elements that were arrayed, go ahead and select the second element. You actually see all of the elements in the array highlight, the spacing is there, and also the number of elements that were arrayed, 4. Go ahead and click on 4, and you have the ability to change it. Key in 5, and then hit the Enter key. Now the array updates. Now all of these elements are all joined together in what's called a group. But you could break them apart, making them all individual so they're no longer associated to the array. To do that, with any of these elements selected in the array, you can click Ungroup on the very right of your ribbon. This will ungroup all of the elements so they're all now individual items. So as you select on any one of the items now that were arrayed, you can see they're no longer part of an array. Now let's start the array command again. This time choose the array command from the ribbon first. So go to the Modify tab, then on the Modify panel, choose Array. Once you select the array command, Revit is asking you to pick whatever you want to array. So in this case, let's pick the diffuser in the upper left. After you've selected it and it changes a different color, we need to tell Revit we're done selecting and we're ready to go to the array command. So hit Enter. Now we're back to where we were at before. Well, let's leave Group and Associate selected, set the number to 4, and then move to Select Last. Just like we did in the previous example, let's drag the actual center of rotation, the little blue dot, from its current position to the diffuser below it. Just hold the left mouse button down on it, drag it to its new location, the center of the diffuser below it, or an endpoint or a corner. It could be any object within your space, and then release your mouse. Now, just like we did before, we need to place the actual angle line to start our measurement. However, keep in mind though, we're measuring from the first element to the last element. Just like in the previous example, move your mouse until the angle line is vertical, left click. This time move counterclockwise 90 degrees, and then left click again. Now what happens is the elements are spaced in between the first and the last. Since we said on the options bar, move to is last, the 90 degrees is between the first element and the last element. It's asking us, do you want 4? Well, let's change 4 to 5, and then hit the enter key. And as you can see, it updates to make 5 elements in the array, but they're spaced between the first element and the last element. Go ahead and click anywhere in the background. Now, if you want to undo anything, just like previous commands, you can undo what you just did by going to the ribbon all the way at the top on the quick options bar and clicking undo. This will undo previous examples and steps that you did, backing up to where you first started. So in summary, what we covered in this lesson was the radial array command. We looked at 2 different methods of starting the array command, one by selecting the object first, and the other by starting the command first. And then we looked at 2 different spacings. We looked at creating a distance or a space, an angle if you will, between the first and second element, and then all subsequent elements have the same spacing. And we also looked at creating the spacing from the first element and the last element, and then all the other elements are placed in between.